Hello, it is your friendly neighborhood literacy auntie, Myneko, and I am coming to you this evening with a video that I wanted to talk about concerning writing. As you know, I'm one of the literacy aunties. We have a channel called Read, Write, and Side Eye because that's what we do. Gen X moms, we're educators and sisters, and I am the grammar and writing teacher. Deanna is the reading specialist. So hopefully you have visited our channel and got a chance to see our interaction. We try to post on Tuesdays and Thursdays and really talk about different reading tips and writing tips and techniques that parents might be able to use in order to assist their children in their writing and their reading journey. So, today, really, what I want to talk to you about is a very fundamental process, and it's actually what it is in the writing department. So as when I start every year, no matter what year it is that I'm teaching, when I hit September, I bring the kids in and I always talk about the first thing that many people have a tendency to overlook, and that is organization. Organization, organization, organization. It is important. And people have a tendency to just kind of want to sit down, start writing and not think things through. Where you have to remember that even the most professional writers, Stephen King, all the ones, the greats that we know, our modern day writers have a process. You must have a process in order to be able to write. And so this is what I teach my students. Now, some people choose to follow, some people don't, but I have found that the students that do decide to follow the process have a better time writing. Or they have it's easier for them to express themselves with their words. They take the time and they really think through. Many of them will actually take this technique and go to college with it. If you are either a student that is interested in improving your writing, maybe a parent that's looking to go back and get your advanced degree, or you are a homeschool mom that wants to help your student with writing, I'm going to tell you, other than, like I mentioned before in one of my videos, confidence is the key, and you need to start off with confidence. The next thing you really need to talk to your student about is the writing process. The writing process is so important. Yeah, we have a tendency to overlook. We get an assignment, and so we want to just dive into it. We really don't think it through. But it's really important to take a moment and to think it through. Spend or consider yourself or try to spend the majority of your time on the writing process at the beginning so then you don't have to worry about your writing at the end. If you spend all of your time and energy setting yourself up for success, your paper will end up being exactly what you need it to be. It will look wonderful. Your teachers will give you the A. And you'll feel better about yourself and build confidence, which is our number one rule, right? So I just want to go through the 5 steps of the writing process. I love English because for some unknown reason, a lot of things that have to deal with English have fives, right? So there are 5 steps to the writing process. There is brainstorming, which is also called pre-writing. There's drafting, there's revising, there's editing, and then there is publishing or finalizing. So I'm going to go through each one of those, talk briefly about each step, and hopefully by the end you will realize, or I hope that you're encouraged or feel like you can do the writing process and learn that you should do it every time you sit down to write. So first, let's talk about the pre-writing process. Pre-writing is important because it is the time that you receive the prompt from your teacher and then you are going to sit and just think, right? You're brainstorming at this time. You're reading the prompts, making sure you understand everything that the teacher's asking about. And I'm going to do another video about prompts and how to read a prompt because many teachers write prompts differently. I always like to say that English is very subjective. English is about the person that you're sitting in front of, not necessarily that everyone has the best tips and everyone knows what to do and everyone's a professional writer. You just learn to write over the years, right? But one of the things that you definitely want to do is to be able to sit and read a prompt. Make sure you understand what the teacher's asking for. Do not go outside that prompt. Do not start adding things into your essay that the prompt is not asking you for. If it's asking for characterization, then you're going to write about a particular character and that characterization, whether it's indirect characterization, direct characterization, you've gone through traits, you're going to focus on that. If they're asking you, or if a teacher's asking you about theme and you're doing a thematic literary analysis, let's just say, you're going to focus on themes. Maybe you're picking out 3 themes because the prompt has asked you to do that. And then you're analyzing with evidence from the text of how to answer that prompt using themes. Okay, so let's just say the prompt has been given to you by the teacher. So you've read the prompt and now you're brainstorming. You're in the process of understanding what it is that you want to put on the paper. I normally recommend that students go and talk to family members, get ideas, read back through the literature piece if that's what you're writing about. If you're writing an expository paper and is asking you to write about the Statue of Liberty or how somebody feels about something, or you're writing about a persuasive argument, should students be able to use cell phones in school? Go and talk to people, find out how they feel about cell phones in school. You want to be able to write very strong supporting details, and we'll talk about those supporting details on another video as well. I know I'm always throwing out this on another video. I'm going to talk about this, but I do want you to understand that there's a lot involved. So in pre-writing, you are brainstorming. You might want to do, an outline, which is what I promote for my students. I promote an outline. There's different types of outlines. You can write a sentence outline. You can write a topic outline. But what you want to do is you want to get your writing in paper. Writing down on paper. Of all of the steps in the writing process, the brainstorming is the most important, and that is where you should take the most of your time. Because if you are going to outline, and and it's also about time management, you want to make sure that you're spending all your time putting in the thought process of your paper and then a limited amount of time typing up the paper in order to finalize. So I like to tell my students that are going to college, you want to, if you get invited to go to a party and, you have a paper that's due, as soon as you get the prompt from your professor, sit down and start outline, spend about 2 or 3 days just working on the outline, looking at the outline. And here's the thing, the more that you write, the better you get at it, and it doesn't take you as long to write. So you want to make sure that you spend all your time on the outline. Create your own outline. Go online and look for different types of outlines. Figure out the best way to structure your paper, and structure is very important. You must learn structure. It'll get you so far in college. Okay, so now you're brainstorming, you've sat down, you have all your ideas. Let's say you're using a 3-point thesis. You have your 3 points that's answering your prompt, right? You created an outline that took you maybe like a day or an evening, that you sat, you created your prompts, you have supporting details, you found evidence, you know what it is that you're going to do, you've put it all together. And so the next step in the writing process, step number 2, is to draft. This is when you go to your computer and then you start just putting everything in a document. So you're going to open up a document, whatever word processing document you use to write, or if you are required, in school, whether you're doing Canvas or you're using Google Documents or you're using Microsoft Teams, you want to be able to go into the document, take your outline, have it next to you, and then you are just writing everything out. If you're writing a 3-paragraph, or I'm sorry, a 1-paragraph, a 3-paragraph, or a 5-paragraph, we are not worried about formatting. We're not worried about spelling. We're not worried about editing. We are getting everything down on paper. Same thing with the brainstorming and the pre-writing. You're not focusing on spelling. We're not focusing on anything that has to do with editing. We're just getting everything on paper. We're making sure everything is where it needs to be. Now, as the second part of the process, this shouldn't take as long as the first process, of course, the first step in the process. The second process is you actually sitting down and committing maybe an hour to type out your entire outline. And like I said, this is for people who choose to use an outline. I highly recommend it. I don't think that you should ever write a paper without an outline. That is just how I feel. That is what I teach. Okay. So after you have everything on your paper, you're not focusing on editing. You're not focusing on spelling. You're not worried about whether sentences work or they don't. You just have everything down. And you're now looking at your paper on the screen. I will tell you, I am a visual learner, so it's much easier for me to see everything on the screen or everything written on a sheet of paper. You put it in a graph and a chart and you have me. But if you do anything else, it's kind of hard for me to kind of follow along. I'm not really auditory, but I'm great visually. So once everything is written in your document, that is when you move to the third step in the writing process, which is revising. Now, a lot of people get revising and editing mixed up because it sounds like, well, all I'm doing is making changes, right? And why are there two steps of me making changes? Here's the difference. Revising is important because revising, you're looking at sentences, you're looking at sentence flow, you're looking at where paragraphs line up. Should this paragraph be focused on this? Maybe I need to change my points around. Maybe this sentence sounds stronger in my next paragraph with my next point. Remember, whenever I speak, I'm always going to talk about 3-point thesis statements. But maybe this sentence is stronger in my next paragraph. Maybe I should consider, looking at this. This looks a little choppy. Let me work on my sentences. You are taking the time during the revision process to revise sentences, paragraphs, structure. That's when we go and we start cleaning up. Right? So we're cleaning up the paper. We're making it look and have the information that we need in it. We're making sure that it is MLA formatted. We're making sure that it has everything that we need. If you are using APA or Chicago, we're going by whatever the professor or the teacher or what is being asked of us and how we're writing. Revising is that opportunity for you to sit and read through. Make sure that everything flows. Make sure that your sentences sound correct, that your words are strong, Then after you revise and you feel comfortable with your revision and everything looks good on the screen, the next step, or step number 4, is to edit. So now we are making more changes, but these are different types of changes, okay? These are the changes now where we concentrate on capitalization, grammar, punctuation, anything that helps our paper or cleans our paper up. Personally, for my classes, once my students get to that editing process, well, they should have done this in the revision, but I have certain words they're allowed to use and they're not allowed to use. Sometimes I give them vocabulary to include in the essay. Sometimes I will ask them to put certain sentences in. I might have taught a grammar skill that week, and I might ask them, make sure you have 3 or 4 examples of direct objects in a sentence, right? So I try to, for me personally, I try to implement a lot of what I'm teaching. I try to throw a lot of grammar skills in writing because it's really hard to isolate skills. It's hard to isolate vocabulary. It's hard to isolate spelling. It's hard to isolate writing and comprehension. It's easier when you ask a student to put everything together in one. Now, can it be a lot? Yes. But I believe my students can do it, and every one of them have always stepped up to the challenge. Okay. And I've also found that consistency is key. So I will talk about that another time. So back to editing. So we're looking at capitalization, right? We're making sure that all of our proper nouns are capitalized. The first word in every sentence is capitalized. Depending on how we're our MLA, we're making sure that, it's the Times New Roman, all of the requirements for MLA. We were doing that in revising, but we're in editing and we're cleaning up. It's our next step of cleaning up. So after we looked at capitalization and make sure everything that is capitalized should be capitalized, then we look at grammar, making sure our sentences are complete. Are all of our sentences complete? I sometimes will ask for a compound sentence, a complex sentence, a compound complex sentence to be included in the essays. Make sure that the sentences have everything that they need for a proper sentence structure. Then after you're looking at the grammar, you're looking at punctuation, which is so important. You want to make sure your commas are where they're supposed to be. Remember, we read, write, and we side eye, and we don't forget the comma, right? So you make sure that the comma is where it's supposed to be. Now, this is when I like to teach compound and complex sentences because compound and complex sentences basically teach two of the, I think there's about 8 to 10 serious normal comma rules that most students need to know, right? In order to edit papers. A lot of people are so intimidated by commas and they're so intimidated by semicolons. I love them. I love them. I love being able to put a comma where it's supposed to be. I love seeing a semicolon where it's supposed to be, recognizing it and understanding why it's there. It's different to pop it in, and it's different if Grammarly or AI tells you it's supposed to be there. You need to know why it's suggesting what it's suggesting. So don't rely on the tools so much. They're great. It's like having a calculator, right? They're great to have, but you cannot rely on them. They're not reliable. You must know why it's suggesting that a comma be there. You must know why it's suggesting a semicolon, why it's telling you that this is active voice versus passive voice, why it's suggesting these changes. The punctuation, you want to make sure you have an end mark on the end of all of your sentences. After you have done your grammar, your punctuation, your capitalization, your paper should look, and you have gone through and made sure that you have checked off everything that the teacher has asked you to check off and everything looks great, then you can move on to publishing. This is what I say for publishing because publishing is just like, oh, okay, all I have to do is click the button and it's done. That is true. But what I like to tell my students is please do not submit anything to me that you are not proud of. That you don't feel like you haven't put in all your time and energy. Now, granted, remember, you're not always going to write the best paper, especially not at the beginning. It takes some time. English is a lifelong skill. Writing is a lifelong skill. You will never, ever be without English, okay, or writing. You're going to have to write some way, shape, or form in every aspect of your life. So therefore, the pressure of writing correctly, especially in middle school and high school, sometimes we just have to temper it, right? And understand that because this is a lifelong skill, we want kids or students to be able to enjoy writing. We don't want them to feel anxious. We don't want them to feel like they're not good enough, that the words that they chose aren't not, the right words. I may feel a certain way about a word, and that's how I choose to express myself. Someone else may decide that that word doesn't work for them. And that's fine, right? Remember, I told you English is subjective. It's about the person that's standing in front of you and teaching it. And as long as that person knows what they're doing and knows how to build confidence and make you feel good, you will write for days. And trust me, when I have students come to me and say, when's the next essay? When's the next essay? When are we going to write again? I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, and I love to write, and I'm just happy that the kids love to write. So before you press that button to submit it to your professor, your teacher, your homeschool instructor, or your tutor, take a second, read through it. Read through it. Here's the tip I give all of my students. Find a bathroom, find a corner in the classroom, go into your bedroom, and read your essay out loud. When you think you're done, you would be surprised when you hear it out loud because you have just spent maybe a day or two if you are, a writer that kind of moves a little fast. Or if you've been working on it for a week because you took like 3 days to work on your outline because you have life and things are happening, right? And it took you 3 days to work on your outline and then you typed and then you revised and then you edited. You've been looking at the same thing for a week. And it sounds good in your head, right? But it might not be as well constructed as you think until you go into a bathroom or a quiet space and read it out loud. And once you read it out loud, you will be surprised. You will have words that you missed. You will have sentences that aren't supposed to be where they're supposed to be. You will have spelling mistakes. I tell my kids, if you're reading a sentence and at any time you find yourself going, then that means it's not clear. Right? It's not clear. So then you sit down right before you send it, make those changes, read it out loud, or have someone else read it out loud. and then you submit it. Now, here's my other last tip before you submit it. Please, please, please have somebody else read your paper. Please have somebody else. Even the most successful writers in this country have editors, they have publishers, they have people that come behind them and they read their work. They read their work. It's not about, lot of times I find myself having to convince kids, yes, you do know what it is that you're writing about, but you need to have somebody else read it and just make sure that they understood what you're saying. Are you really reaching your target audience? If you're writing a paper about why students should be able to have vending machines in the classroom and be able to, at school, and then you're debating on whether businesses or companies should profit off of those vending machines. You want to make sure and have a teacher read it. Have somebody that might be your audience. Who is your audience for your paper? Have that person read it and make sure they understand what it is that you're trying to get across. Now, I know the writing process might seem like it's a lot. It's 5 steps. It's not a lot. Trust me. If you put in all of the work at the beginning, at the end, it will not take you a long time. You will find yourself after paper number 1, paper number 2, your 1 week of writing an essay would turn into maybe 4 days, and then it turns into 3 days, and then you're able to get it done in about 5 hours because you just sat down and you have a process. And now you know your writing style, you know when it's best for you to write, at night, in the morning, after classes, on the weekend. You might want to write while you're listening to music. I encourage my kids at school, because we handwrite now in the class, to listen to music while they're writing. It's my way of them being able to block out the outside world and the outside noise, concentrate on their own thoughts, because the people around them might not necessarily be as serious about writing as they are, right? So I'm trying to create an environment for them that they can write successfully and feel good about their papers. And then once you're finished and you publish it and you send it to that professor, you send it to that teacher, depending on what it is, you can sit back and feel pretty confident. I'm going to tell you a little secret. A lot of teachers really don't. Some teachers who have smaller classes will grade on content. Some teachers who have very large classes, like for me, I have about 100 students that I have. Roughly, I teach a homeschool class and I'm teaching at my school. And that's every day. That's about 100 students. It's really hard. And remember, I told you I'm consistent. We're writing at least 6 or 7 essays for the year. So it's hard to stay on top of every little tiny thing. But what I do is I give my students a rubric and I compare everything that's in that essay onto that rubric. As long as you have the rubric or you have an idea of what it is that your teacher or professor is looking for, you should not have a problem writing your paper. Okay? So I hope all of these tips were helpful. I hope that I opened up somebody's world or eyes to writing. Maybe you might have tried to figure out where to get started. Start with the writing process. I'm telling you, you will never ever go wrong. All right, please don't hesitate to visit our channel, Read, Write, and Side-Eye with the Literacy Aunties. I'm Myneko. I teach writing and grammar. My sister, Deanna, is a reading specialist, and she's wonderful at it. So please make sure you visit our channel and find out more tips and tricks for writing successfully and for reading successfully in school. All right, I'll see you on the next video. Bye.